everyone. Today we are going to be learning about errors and exception handling in Python. Sorry, a bit wordy there. Now, if you're stuck on this topic, don't worry, you can access the practice notebook by clicking the link in the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and hop onto my Jupyter notebook so you can learn about errors and exception handling in Python. See you there. Okay, so here I am at my Jupyter notebook. And first, I need to tell you what errors and exception handling is. So obviously, anyone who has done Python has probably encountered errors, even if they're super advanced. So first, I'm going to write down a piece of code that makes an error occur. So first, I'm going to put in a print statement, and instead, I'm only going to put in one speech mark and put in hello. Okay, so print hello. And if I run this, I get an error. So here, the first line over here, it will say in this file. So so my file right now is this file over here. So a bit confusing, but it's helpful to know that this is a file. And then it tells us which line the error is on. So it says line 1. So this line over here is line 1. Whoops. So this is line 1, okay? And then it says what our code is where the error occurred. And then here it says it's a syntax error, and it tells us what that syntax error is. So it says EOL while scanning string literal. So what EOL, it means end of line, because it happened near the end of the line. So it'll say the end of line while scanning string literal. That is because I did not put my end over here, so it's saying that, okay? So let's look at another example. So this time I'm going to take away the speech marks and just put in plain hello. Okay, so now here it says this is a name error, okay? And sometimes it has these dashes over here and it says what kind of error it is. And then it says trace back most recent call last. Okay, so this is our most recent error. And then here's our file. And in this whole module, so in Jupyter, a module is one file. And then here it says there's an arrow and it says 1, so that means this is line 1. And then our piece of code was hello, and this is where the error was. And then it says name error here, and it's telling us what the name error is. And here it's saying the name hello is not defined, because our Python interpreter is thinking that hello is a variable, and we haven't assigned to it. So it's saying it is not defined. Okay, so let's look at one more. And now I'm going to say, I'm going to say print 5 plus 5. Okay, so if I run this, I've got a type error now. And again, here are these dashes. So if it's a syntax error, it doesn't come with these dashes and all of this up here. So right now it's saying my file again, and in this whole module, and it's telling me line 1. So over here, so comments can be recorded in errors if it's looking at a whole line, but they won't be part of the error. So here, this print 5 plus 5 is the piece of code that occurred the error. And here in what type of type error is this? So it says unsupported operand types for int plus string. So what it's telling us is Python does not support the addition of an integer, which is 5 over here, and our string, which is 5 over here, because I put it in quotations. Okay, so now maybe sometimes you don't want your errors coming up, and you just want to write a piece of code that doesn't include errors, even if an error does occur. So this is where our exception handling comes in, okay? So here we use the keywords try and except. So here is the format. So you put in try, whoops, try, and then we put in except. Okay, so a bit like a for loop. And these are the main keywords you need to use. So let's have a go at actually trying. Okay, so here I'm going to say try. So I want to try to print 4 plus 4, and then except, so if the error doesn't come, and here you can specify whatever error you want. So if it's except type error, so type error, whoops, and you put your colon, and then if a type error occurs, then I want to print, whoops, I want to print sorry you, let's just put in double quotes instead. So sorry you can't add a number to a string. Okay, so now let's test this out. Sorry, you can't add a number to a string. And if you don't know all the errors in Python, it's fine. You can just put in except. So if any other errors come, so if type error comes or a syntax error comes, it'll still print this. So sorry, you can't add a number to a string. Okay, so now let's try putting in syntax error. Okay, so it comes up with a type error, because so let's see if we can add in both. So I'm just going to use and, so except and type error. Okay, so you can use the and keyword here as well. So let's see if we can use the or keyword. Okay, so the or keyword doesn't really work in this case, but we can put and it works. Okay, so this is a very basic example, and now let's use an else keyword. So you can add in else. It's optional, but normally I would prefer putting in try and except only. Okay, so let's see what else does. Okay, so I'm going to say to try to add A to B, and obviously I didn't define that. Sorry, I need to put this on another line. Whoops. There we go. So try to add A and B, and if there is no if there is a type error, so let's just use that for now. So if there is a type error, so obviously this isn't a type error, so except type error. Then, so if it isn't a type error, I want to print I want to print this is a type error. So let's just put our capital letter over here so it looks more like a type error. So this is a type error, and if a type error does not occur, print out so else I want to print this is another error. Okay, so now let's try it out. So it's a name error, so let's just so obviously it's a name error because I said if it's not a type error, then I want to print this is a type error. Otherwise, I want to print this is another error. So now I'm going to put in type error and name error. This is a type error or a name error, okay? So this is a type error or a name error, okay? So now let's try now since we have used else, I'm going to put in another condition where it will print out this. Okay, so I'm now going to write in print and then hello. Okay, so it's not giving me this. That is because this else refers to if these errors aren't working. So now let's try it without. See, so it wasn't a type error. So now it's not gonna print this out because this is only if we don't have any errors. So if I put this back in, whoops. Hello, this is another error. Okay, so if we change this to I was successfully run. Okay, so this else statement prints out if there are no errors. Okay, so yes. Okay, so now notice that we have only used the else statement. Okay, so now we are going to use the finally statement, and what the finally statement does, so even if there's an error, it won't be bothered. Okay, so it will run even if there is an error. So let me show you. So I'm going to say try and then I am going to put in whoops. Yeah, let's put this in. So while true print I am true. So obviously this is going to create an error. Okay, so try this. Except I am going to put in so if there is an error, I want to print uh-oh, there was an error. Okay, so there was an error. And now I'm going to put in my finally statement. So finally. So even if I get this error, I want to print this out. Print. Whoops. I will always be executed. Okay, so I will always be executed. Okay, so here I got another error. So here it says except if I get an error, print there's an error. So let's fix this and put in lowercase. See, there we go. I've got an infinity loop now. So let me put in something else so it's not that complex. So now I'm going to put in a simple print statement. Print a. There we go. Okay, so nothing happened over here. So there was. Let's try this again. So I'm just going to refresh my kernel. Should work now. There we go, it was just a bit slow. So now it's saying, there's an error. I will always be executed. So our accept and finally worked, okay? So let's try another error and see if it works like that. So print, hey there. Whoops. Hey there. So obviously it's not printing out. So now if I put in syntax error, let's see if it works now. See, it's not really working because my finally block is in there. Okay, so it's gonna work with very simple ones. Okay, so I'm sure you've got the hang of it now. And I just changed this right here. But let's go on to a more advanced example, because this so what the reason I put in except is, well, you don't need it when you have try and finally. This is because it doesn't really get, and the except block doesn't really get executed when you put in finally. So if we take this away, and let's see if we get an error. Okay, so we won't get an error, it's fine. So if I ask to print that, so obviously this isn't getting executed because of my error over here. So now let's go on to a very advanced example, because sometimes try and accept can come really can be really helpful, okay, especially in big projects. So I'm going to define a function. I'm going to call this askInt. So it's going to ask an integer, and I'm going to put in try. So I'm going to say my value is equal to the integer of the input. Please enter an integer. Okay, so please enter an integer. So if I get an error, then I'm gonna put in except. So except I want to print looks like you did not did not enter an integer. Okay, so it looks like you did not enter an integer. Sorry about my spelling mistakes here. So if there's an error, obviously that means I didn't type in an integer. Okay, so if that does not, if I don't get, even if I don't get errors, so one trick is to put in a line after our try and accept block, and then we can put in finally. So finally, so if even if I get the error, I want to print out finally I executed. Okay, so finally I executed. Okay, and after that I want to print out the value. Okay, so print the value. So let's test this out and put in askInt. Please enter an integer. Okay, so this is working, and I'm going to type in 5. Looks like you did not enter an integer. Finally, I executed. So basically, I found out that the reason this didn't execute is because you have to put a line after your exec block. Otherwise, it won't execute. Okay, so please enter an integer. Okay, so I entered in 5. Looks like you did not enter an integer, and I got an error. So literally, notice how we got an error when trying to print our value, because it was not properly assigned. Okay, so let's give our function a little remedy by asking the user and checking to make sure the input type is an integer. Okay, so here I'm just going to edit this. So obviously these two lines are going to stay the same over here. And here I'm going to put in my value is equal to the integer of the input try again, please enter an integer. Okay, So let's just put in our spaces here. And then let's try this again. Okay, so please enter an integer. I'm going to put in 5 again. Looks like you did not enter an integer. Okay, so if I put in def for some reason, finally I executed, and there we go. I got my error again. Okay, because it only did one check, and then after that it just stopped checking. Okay, so now I'm going to use a while loop. So I'm just going to write this again. So I'm going to reassign my function. So def askInt. So obviously I'm reassigning my function, and now I'm going to put in a while loop. So while true, I want to try this. So while true, I want to try, and then I'm going to ask for the integer. So let's just copy and paste what I wrote over here. Okay, and then paste it over here. So let's, okay, so obviously I want to ask for the input, and if I get an error, so except I want to print again, looks like you didn't enter an integer. Okay, so obviously that would be true, because they didn't enter an integer. And now I'm going to continue, so it will continue the loop, and then after that I'm going to put in my else statement just to make it a bit, just so it will tell me if I have entered an integer or not. So else, so if I don't get an error, I want to print yep, that's definitely an integer. Okay, and after that, if they have entered an integer, I want to break the loop, and then I want to put in finally, because I want to run something after that. So let me just put my line over here. So finally, and then let's scroll down a bit. Finally, I want to print finally I executed. Okay, so finally I executed. Let's just put this in over here. Take away this. And then after all of this runs, all I want to do after that is to print out my value. Okay, so now let's try and put in askInt, and then if I run this, please enter an integer. So I'm going to put in 5. Looks like you did not enter an integer. Finally, I executed. Okay, so please enter an integer. 6. So it says that again. Please enter an integer. I'm just going to put in the def keyword. Please enter an integer. Finally, I'm going to put in 3. Yeah, that's definitely an integer. Finally, I executed. Okay, so why did our function print finally I executed after every loop over here? Okay, so this is because with a try, except, and finally, any continue or break statement will just will be stopped until after the try clause is completed. Okay, so right now our finally will be executed after every loop because it is in this while loop over here. Okay, and it will even be executed after break statement. So as I told you before, finally will not be bothered by any continue, break, or pass, nothing like that. Okay, so let's make out one final little adjustment just so it's a bit more realistic. So after that, after it's printed, yep, that's definitely an integer. I want to print out the value. and take this away here, okay? Because it would be weird to print out the value over here. Okay, so if I run this again, please enter an integer. 5. Okay, I did not enter an integer. G, some random letters, 4. C. So as soon as we entered, yep, that's fine. As soon as it printed out, yep, that's definitely an integer. It printed out my value because I put it in this else block over here. Okay, so as you see right here, using try and except blocks can be really useful if you want to determine if what the user has typed in. Okay. Okay, so before we end this video, I want to show you a website where you can go and find some really nice information. Okay, so I'll show you at my browser. So here I am at my other browser, and obviously first you need to type in errors and exceptions in Python, okay? So sorry about that spelling here. It will still correct it. So here it will say errors and exceptions, and after that it will say Python 3.8.3 documentation. So this is the version I'm in. Otherwise it will say some other otherwise it will say some other version. So I click that. And here it's telling me some errors and exceptions over here, so all these errors. And then it's telling me how to handle these errors. And over here I did not tell you what pass statement that you can use the pass statement, but you can because it's actually kind of like a while loop. Okay, so here's some nice information. Okay, and it's actually quite good to read. Okay, so even if you can't find the site, don't worry, I will link it in the practice notebook below. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's the end of today's lesson, and I guess that's it. So bye, and please don't forget to subscribe.